Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been driving trucks for 22 years. Started when I was 23, fresh out of a failed marriage and looking for something that would keep me moving. The road became my life. I've seen accidents that would make your stomach turn. I've driven through blizzards where I couldn't see 5 feet ahead. I've had close calls with deer, drunk drivers, and my own exhaustion. But I never spooked easily. Not until that night in Missouri. It was late October, maybe 2 years ago now. I was hauling a load of auto parts from St. Louis down to Tulsa, running I-44 through the quiet stretch between Rolla and Springfield. That part of Missouri gets real empty at night. Just rolling hills, dense woods on either side, and the occasional gas station that closes at sundown. The kind of empty that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. The temperature had dropped hard that evening. Fog was rolling in thick, cutting my visibility down to almost nothing. My headlights just bounced back at me, turning everything into a gray soup. I'd been driving for about 9 hours straight, and my eyes were starting to play tricks on me. You know that feeling where you blink and suddenly you're not sure if you've been awake the whole time or if you dozed off for a second. That's when I knew I had to stop. The rest stop appeared out of the fog like something out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare. It was small, just a single building with bathrooms and a couple vending machines. The parking lot was mostly empty except for 2 other trucks, parked far apart from each other, their cabs dark. No attendants, no security, just a few flickering fluorescent lights mounted on poles that made the fog glow in patches. I pulled in and parked near the bathroom building. The engine ticked as it cooled. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, just looking at the place. Something felt off immediately. Too quiet. Even with my windows up, I couldn't hear anything. No crickets, no wind. Just that low electric hum from the lights overhead, buzzing and flickering like they were about to give out. I almost left right then. My gut was telling me to just push through, find a truck stop with people and lights and the smell of bad coffee. But exhaustion won out. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd been in plenty of rest stops just like this one. I just needed to use the bathroom, maybe splash some water on my face, then I'd be good for another couple hours. The cold hit me as soon as I stepped out. The kind of cold that gets into your bones. My breath came out in thick clouds. I locked the truck, force of habit, and walked toward the bathroom building. Gravel crunched under my boots. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting these weird shadows that seemed to move when they shouldn't. The bathroom door was heavy. It scraped against the concrete floor when I pushed it open. Inside, it smelled like mildew and rust and something else I couldn't quite place. Something sour. The walls were covered in old tile, yellowed and cracked. One light flickered above the row of sinks, making this electrical buzzing sound that set my teeth on edge. I walked to the sink and turned on the faucet. The water came out brown at first, then cleared to a rusty orange. I splashed some on my face anyway. The cold shocked my system a little, woke me up. I looked at myself in the mirror, bloodshot eyes, 2 days of stubble, the wear of too many miles showing in the lines around my mouth. That's when I noticed the scratches. They were on the mirror, carved into the silvering on the back. At first, they just looked random, like someone had taken a key or a knife and just scraped. But the longer I looked, the more I could make out shapes. Letters. Words, maybe. I leaned in closer, squinting in the bad light. "Don't sleep here." The words were faint but deliberate. Someone had taken their time carving them. My gut tightened. I told myself it was just a prank. Teenagers trying to scare people, vandals with nothing better to do, but my hands were already shaking as I turned off the water. That's when I realized how cold it had gotten. I could see my breath now, thick and white in the air. The temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees in the few minutes I'd been inside. It didn't make sense. There was no AC running, no windows open, just that impossible cold, like I'd stepped into a walk-in freezer. I heard something then, a sound from one of the stalls behind me. Soft at first, a scraping noise. Metal on tile, slow and deliberate. I froze, watching the stalls in the mirror's reflection. "Hello?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. The scraping stopped immediately. Silence, not even the drip of a faucet, just that electric hum from the light overhead. I waited, counting my heartbeats. 5, 10, 15. Nothing. I started backing toward the door, my eyes locked on the stalls. There were 3 of them, and the middle one had its door slightly ajar, just a crack, enough to see darkness inside, and in that darkness I could make out a shape, a shadow. Something standing perfectly still just behind the door, not sitting on the toilet, not moving, just standing there, waiting. My back hit the bathroom door. I didn't turn around. Didn't take my eyes off that stall. I just pushed backward, felt the door give way, and stumbled out into the cold night air. I ran to my truck. My hands fumbled with the keys. The engine was still running. I'd left it on, thank God. I yanked the door open and practically threw myself inside, slamming the locks down the second I was in. My breath came in ragged gasps. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That's when I noticed the other 2 trucks were gone. Both of them. The parking lot was empty now except for my rig and the buzz of those overhead lights. I hadn't heard them leave, hadn't heard engines starting or gravel crunching or air brakes releasing. They'd just vanished while I was in that bathroom. I should have left right then, should have thrown the truck in gear and gotten the hell out of there. But I was so tired, exhausted down to my bones, and I kept telling myself there had to be a rational explanation. The other drivers probably left while I was inside. The cold in the bathroom was probably just bad ventilation. The shadow in the stall was probably just my mind playing tricks in the bad light. I reclined the seat just a little. Set an alarm on my phone for 30 minutes. Just a quick power nap, I told myself. Then I'd drive straight through to Springfield. I closed my eyes. I don't know how long I was out before the tapping started. Soft at first, so soft I thought I was dreaming it. Then louder. Someone knocking on the passenger window. Tap, tap, tap. I jerked awake, my heart already racing before I was fully conscious. A man was standing outside the passenger window. His face was pressed against the glass, close enough that his breath was fogging it up in patches. He was pale. Not just regular pale, the kind of pale that looks wrong. Gray pale. His cheeks were sunken, his eyes too wide. He was wearing a jacket, stained with something dark around the collar, and he was smiling, this wide, unnatural grin that showed too many teeth. The kind of smile that makes your hindbrain scream danger. He tapped again, slowly, deliberately, 3 times. Then his lips moved, mouthing words through the glass. Let me in. I couldn't move. My body had frozen, every muscle locked up. His eyes were locked on mine, and they were wrong. Too wide, unblinking. Like he'd forgotten how to blink, or maybe had never learned in the first place. The tapping continued. Rhythmic now, hypnotic. Tap, 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 like he had all the time in the world, like he knew I couldn't move. Couldn't do anything but sit there and watch him through the glass. My hand finally moved toward the ignition, but then it froze again. Because I'd seen something in the side mirror. The man wasn't alone. There were others now. 3 more figures standing just behind him, just outside the pool of light from the overhead lamps. I could barely make them out, just dark shapes against the fog. But they were there. Silent. Watching. Waiting. That broke the spell. Adrenaline hit my system like electricity. I slammed the truck into gear and floored the accelerator. Gravel sprayed behind me as the truck lurched forward. I didn't look back, didn't check the mirrors. I just drove, one hand on the wheel and the other braced against the door, like I could somehow keep them out through sheer force of will. I drove for 2 hours straight, didn't slow down until I saw the lights of Springfield ahead, bright and warm and full of people and life. I pulled into the first truck stop I found, one with a dozen other rigs and a 24-hour diner attached. My hands were still shaking when I finally put the truck in park. I checked my phone. 3:47 a.m. But something was wrong. My alarm had never gone off. I'd set it for 30 minutes. Half an hour max. I looked at the dash cam footage timestamp, the one that records continuously, that I use for insurance purposes. According to the footage, I'd been parked at that rest stop for 4 hours. 4 hours. I had no memory of anything after I closed my eyes except the tapping on the window. I sat there in that truck stop parking lot until the sun came up. Drank 3 cups of coffee in the diner, surrounded by other drivers swapping stories and complaining about traffic. Normal things. Human things. I finished the delivery, drove back to St. Louis like I was supposed to. But I couldn't shake it. 2 weeks later, I walked into my dispatcher's office and turned in my resignation. He asked why. After 22 years, why now? I didn't explain. Couldn't explain. How do you tell someone that you lost 4 hours of your life in a rest stop parking lot? That you saw something wearing a man's face smiling at you through glass? That sometimes, when you're trying to fall asleep, you still hear it. That tapping. Soft at first, then louder. I never drove I-44 again. Haven't been back to Missouri. Got a job doing local deliveries, home every night. Safe, boring, alive. But late at night, when the house is quiet and I'm lying in bed, I still hear it sometimes, that rhythmic tapping, and I wonder if I really drove away from that rest stop at all, or if I'm still parked there, in the dark, with something standing outside my window, waiting for me to let it in. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. I've been driving trucks for 18 years now. Started late. I was 32 when I got my CDL, which made me older than most of the rookies at the training facility. Being a woman in this industry meant I had to be tougher than the men twice my size, and I learned fast. I could back a trailer into a loading dock in one try. I could change a tire in under 20 minutes. And I never, ever stopped for hitchhikers. Until that morning in Nevada. Route 50 runs straight through the heart of Nevada, and they don't call it the loneliest road in America for nothing. It's over 400 miles of nothing but sagebrush, empty sky, and the occasional gas station that looks like it hasn't seen a customer since 1987. Most drivers avoid it if they can. But if you're hauling refrigerated goods from Sacramento to Denver like I was, it's the fastest route. It was around 4:30 in the morning, that dead time before dawn when the world feels like it's holding its breath. The sky was still dark, stars fading, but the sun not quite ready to show itself. My radio had given up about 50 miles back, nothing but static on every station. My phone had no signal. I was completely alone out there, and honestly, I liked it that way. No traffic, no distractions, just me, the road, and the hum of the refrigeration unit behind me. That's when I saw him. He was standing on the shoulder, thumb out, like hitchhikers do. But we were in the middle of absolute nowhere. No buildings, no cars, no houses. The nearest town was Austin, and that was still 50 miles ahead. There was no reason for anyone to be standing on the side of Route 50 at 4:30 in the morning unless something had gone very, very wrong. I should have kept driving. That was the rule. Never stop for hitchhikers, especially not out here where cell phones don't work and help could be hours away. But something made me slow down. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the loneliness of the road getting to me. I pulled over onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under my tires. The air brakes hissed as I came to a stop. I watched in my side mirror as the man approached. He moved slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. He was wearing a faded denim jacket, jeans and work boots. Clean cut, maybe mid-30s. Normal looking enough. But as he got closer, something felt off. His movements were too smooth, too controlled, like he was gliding more than walking. He reached the passenger door and climbed in without asking. Didn't knock. Didn't wait for permission. Just opened the door and slid into the seat like he belonged there. That should have been my first warning. Should have been the moment I told him to get out. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching him, my hands still on the wheel. He didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead through the windshield at the empty highway stretching into darkness. The cab felt smaller suddenly, colder. I tried to remember if I'd turned. Down the AC, but I couldn't recall touching it. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Friendly, like having a stranger climb into my truck at 4:30 in the morning was perfectly normal. No answer. He just kept staring ahead. "You got a name?" Nothing, not even a glance in my direction. The smell hit me then. At first I thought it was just dust from the road, but there was something else underneath it. Something chemical, sharp and wrong, like formaldehyde, like something preserved, something dead. I shifted the truck into gear and started driving, telling myself I'd drop him at the next town and be done with it. Austin was less than an hour away. I could manage an hour of uncomfortable silence. I'd driven through worse. But the miles ticked by, and he didn't move, didn't shift in his seat, didn't fidget or look around like a normal person would. Just sat there, perfectly still, staring straight ahead. His hands rested on his thighs, pale hands, almost gray in the dim light of the dashboard. No dirt under the nails, even though he'd been standing in the desert. No sweat on his skin, even though it was already 90 degrees outside. I glanced at him again. His chest wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. At least I couldn't see him breathing. My own breath was coming faster now, shallow and tight. I gripped the steering wheel harder, knuckles going white. "Listen," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. "I'm going to drop you off in Austin. That work for you?" Still nothing. Just that horrible, suffocating silence. We passed a mile marker, then another. The highway stretched on endlessly, the white lines disappearing under my headlights and reappearing in a hypnotic rhythm. I kept checking my mirrors, looking for other cars, other signs of life, but there was nothing. Just us and the darkness, and that smell getting stronger. I glanced at him one more time, and that's when I saw it. He was smiling now, not at me, not at anything in particular. Just smiling. This wide, unnatural grin that spread across his face like something carved there. His teeth were too white, too perfect, like dentures, but wrong somehow. Too many of them, or maybe too straight. I couldn't look away. "Get out," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. "Get out of my truck." He didn't respond, didn't stop smiling. Just sat there with that horrible grin, staring straight ahead at nothing. I pulled hard on the wheel, jerking the truck onto the shoulder. Gravel sprayed. The trailer fishtailed slightly before I got it under control. I slammed on the brakes, and we skidded to a stop in a cloud of dust. "Get out!" I was yelling now, my hand fumbling for the door handle. "Get out now!" He turned to me then, slowly, like his neck was on a swivel, and when he faced me fully, when I saw him in the glow of the dashboard lights, my heart stopped. His face was mine, same nose, same eyes, same scar on my left cheek from when I fell off my bike as a kid and needed 7 stitches. It was my face, but wrong. The features were right, but the expression was hollow, empty. like someone had traced the outline of a person but forgotten to put anything inside. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just stared at myself, staring back at me, wearing that terrible smile. Then it spoke, in my voice, my exact voice, the same tone, the same slight rasp from years of truck stop coffee and cigarettes. You shouldn't have stopped. My body moved on instinct. I shoved, hard, and it stumbled backward, falling out of the open passenger door. It landed in the dirt with a soft thump, and I didn't wait to see if it got up. I yanked my door closed, locked it, threw the truck into gear, and floored the accelerator. The engine roared. The tires spun, caught traction, and the truck lurched forward. I didn't look back. Not at first. I kept my eyes locked on the road ahead, my foot pressed to the floor, my whole body shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel steady. But after a few seconds, maybe 10, maybe 30, I couldn't tell. I glanced at the side mirror. It was standing in the middle of the road, just standing there, arms at its sides, watching me drive away. Still wearing my face, still smiling, and then it was gone. Not walking away, not fading into the distance, just gone. 1 second it was there, the next second nothing. No dust, no movement, just empty highway where it had been standing. I drove until the sun came up, didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't breathe right until I saw the lights of Ely ahead. Another truck stop with other rigs parked and other drivers milling around with their coffee. Real people, living people. I pulled in and sat there for 20 minutes before I could make myself move. My hands were cramped from gripping the wheel so hard. I had to pry my fingers off one by one. I checked my logbook later, trying to make sense of what had happened. According to the timestamps, I'd been pulled over on the shoulder for 11 minutes. 11 minutes. But it had felt like seconds. Like I'd pushed it out and driven away immediately. Where did those minutes go? What happened during that time? I reviewed my dash cam footage that night after I'd finished the delivery and checked into a motel. I had to know, had to see proof that it had really happened. But when I pulled up the file, the footage was corrupted. Just static and white noise, like someone had taken a magnet to it. The entire stretch from when I picked up the hitchhiker to when I reached Ely, gone. Nothing but digital snow and a sound like wind or breathing or something whispering words I couldn't quite make out. I paused the playback right before the corruption started, right at the moment when the figure first appeared on the shoulder. And there, just visible in the edge of the frame, was the passenger window, and in the reflection of the glass, I could see a face staring back at the camera. My face, but I was in the driver's seat. The angle was all wrong. There was no way my reflection should have been visible in the passenger window, and yet there it was, staring directly at the lens, with that same horrible smile. I quit 3 days later, sold my rig to another driver for half what it was worth. Didn't negotiate, didn't care. I just wanted to be done with it. I moved back east to Virginia where I grew up. Got a job working at a distribution warehouse. Same industry, but no more long hauls, no more empty highways, no more being alone. My family thinks I burned out, that 18 years on the road finally caught up with me. Maybe they're right. Maybe that's all it was, exhaustion, hallucinations brought on by too many sleepless nights and too many miles. That's what I tell myself sometimes. But I don't look in mirrors anymore if I can help it, and when I do, when I'm washing my hands in a public restroom or catching my reflection in a store window, I make sure to look quickly. Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, when I glance at my reflection, it doesn't move quite right. There's a delay, just a fraction of a second, like it's waiting to see what I'll do before it copies me. And once, about 6 months ago, I was alone in my apartment late at night. I walked past the bathroom mirror on my way to bed and caught my reflection in the corner of my eye. I stopped, looked closer. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. I'm a regional driver, mostly East Coast routes, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, that general area. I've been doing it for about 12 years now. It's good work, decent pay, home most weekends. Nothing too exciting, which is exactly how I like it. Or liked it, anyway. Before the delivery. It was mid-March, a Thursday night. I was finishing up a run in Pittsburgh when my dispatcher called with a last-minute order. That was unusual right there. Most of our deliveries are scheduled days in advance. But this one had just come through, he said. Priority pickup in Pittsburgh, delivery to a warehouse outside Charleston, West Virginia. Had to be there by midnight. The pay caught my attention. Double my usual rate, plus overnight differential. For a relatively short haul, maybe 4, 5 hours, depending on traffic, that was good money. Too good, really. I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why someone was willing to pay that much for what sounded like a standard delivery. But I needed the money. Divorce isn't cheap, and I was still paying off legal fees. So I said yes. The pickup was normal enough. Industrial facility in Pittsburgh, loading dock, pallets of what looked like machine parts or equipment, heavy stuff wrapped in plastic and strapped to wooden platforms. Nobody talked much. The warehouse guys loaded it, I signed the paperwork, and I was on the road by 7:30 p.m. The drive started out fine, I-79 south, cutting through the hills of West Virginia as the sun set behind me. But about 2 hours in, things started to feel off. The address I'd been given was vague. Just coordinates, no actual street address. No company name on the paperwork. Just a grid reference and a note. Warehouse delivery. Leave cargo at dock. Do not enter building. That last part stuck with me. Do not enter building. Why would they need to specify that? Who goes into buildings they're not supposed to? My GPS started acting up around mile marker 90. The screen flickered, then went dark completely. Just dead. I pulled over, tried restarting it. Nothing. So I had to switch to the old paper maps I keep in the glove box, the ones I haven't needed in 5 years. The coordinates led me off I-79 onto a state highway, then onto progressively smaller roads. 2-lane county roads, then 1-lane roads with no center line, then gravel. I was deep in the hills now, surrounded by dense forest on both sides. No streetlights, no houses, no lights at all except my headlights cutting through the darkness. The trees pressed in close, branches scraping against the top of the trailer as I drove. My phone had lost signal about 15 miles back. I was completely cut off. The warehouse appeared suddenly, almost like it materialized out of the darkness. 1 second there was just road and trees. The next second this massive concrete building was looming on my right. It was huge, maybe 3 stories tall, windowless except for a few narrow openings near the roof that were broken or boarded up. The walls were stained with rust and water damage. Weeds grew up through cracks in the parking lot. It looked abandoned, completely abandoned. No lights, no signs, no other vehicles. Nothing to indicate anyone had been here in years. I parked near the loading dock and killed the engine. Silence rushed in immediately, the kind of heavy, oppressive silence you only get in the deep woods, miles from civilization. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, looking at the building. Everything in me was screaming to leave, to just turn around and drive away and tell my dispatcher the address was wrong, but I needed this job, needed the money, and technically, I just had to unload the cargo at the dock. I didn't have to go inside. The paperwork had been very clear about that. I tried calling dispatch, no signal. I tried texting. Nothing. I was on my own. I grabbed my flashlight from under the seat and climbed out of the cab. The air hit me immediately, cold and damp even though it was March and the temperature should have been in the 50s. It smelled wrong too. Chemical. Sour, like rotting meat mixed with industrial cleaner. The kind of smell that makes your eyes water and your stomach turn. I walked around to the back of the trailer and opened it up. The pallets were still there, still strapped down exactly as they'd been loaded in Pittsburgh. I got the manual pallet jack. These things weighed too much to carry, and started pulling the first one toward the loading dock. That's when I heard it. Footsteps inside the warehouse. Slow. Deliberate. Heavy boots on concrete. The sound echoed in the empty space, making it hard to tell exactly where it was coming from, but it was definitely getting closer. Approaching the loading dock door. I stopped, heart hammering in my chest. Listened. The footsteps stopped too. Complete silence. Not even wind in the trees. "Hello?" I called out. "Delivery's here." No answer. Just that oppressive, suffocating silence. Then the footsteps started again. Closer now. Definitely approaching the loading dock. I could hear each individual step, the scuff of boots on concrete, the slight echo that suggested the space inside was huge and empty. I backed toward my truck, eyes locked on the loading dock door. It was metal, rusted at the edges, with a heavy chain and padlock securing it. The chain looked old, the kind of rust and corrosion you get from years, maybe decades of exposure. Nobody had opened that door in a very long time. But something was on the other side. I could hear it, could feel it. Whatever was making those footsteps was standing right there, just on the other side of the door. Waiting. The door rattled. Hard. The chain jumped and clanked against the metal. Someone, or something, was trying to open it, trying to get out. The rattling grew more violent, more desperate. The whole door shook in its frame. Metal screeched. The chain held, but barely. Then it stopped. Sudden, complete silence again. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I turned and ran back to my truck, fumbling with the keys. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I'd never been so grateful to hear that sound in my entire life. But when I turned the key, nothing happened. The engine turned over once, twice, then died. The dashboard lights flickered and went dark. Dead battery. Impossible. The truck had been running perfectly 2 minutes ago. Batteries don't just die like that. I tried again. Click. Nothing. The truck was completely dead. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed my flashlight and popped the hood release. I had to check the battery, had to figure out what was wrong. I climbed out shaking and lifted the hood. The battery cables were disconnected. Both of them, not loose, disconnected. Completely removed from the terminals and lying against the engine block. Someone had opened my hood while I was unloading and deliberately disabled my truck. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting farther through the darkness. The loading dock door was open now, just a crack, maybe 6 inches. I didn't hear it open, didn't hear the chain break or the lock fall, but it was open, and through that gap I could see darkness. Complete, absolute darkness, the kind of darkness that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. And in that darkness, something moved. A shape. Tall, roughly humanoid, but wrong somehow. The proportions were off, arms too long, shoulders too narrow, head tilted at an angle that wasn't quite natural. It was standing just inside the threshold, perfectly still. Watching me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. I reached into the engine compartment, grabbed the battery cables, and jammed them back onto the terminals. Positive first, then negative. I didn't care about doing it right. I just needed the truck to start. I slammed the hood and practically threw myself into the cab. The key was still in the ignition. I turned it, and the engine roared to life immediately. Thank God, thank God. I threw the truck into gear and hit the gas. The truck lurched forward. Gravel sprayed behind me. I didn't care about the pallets still in the trailer, didn't care about the delivery. I just needed to get away from that place. In the rearview mirror, I saw it. The shape. It was outside now, standing in the middle of the parking lot. Just standing there, perfectly motionless, watching me drive away. The darkness seemed to cling to it like oil, making it hard to see clearly, but I could make out the outline. That too tall figure with its wrong proportions and its head tilted at that unnatural angle. I didn't slow down. I drove straight back the way I'd come, following the gravel road until I hit pavement, then following the state highway until I saw lights. Civilization. A 24-hour truck stop on I-79. I pulled in and sat there, engine running, hands gripping the wheel, for 20 minutes before I could make myself move. I finally climbed out and checked the trailer. The pallets were still there, all of them. Not a single one was missing, but that didn't make sense. I'd pulled the first one halfway to the loading dock. It should have been left behind when I drove away, but there it was, still strapped down with all the others, like I'd never touched it. I checked the straps. They were tight, secure, like they'd never been loosened. But I knew I'd unstrapped that first pallet. I remembered doing it. I remembered the squeal of the ratchet as I released the tension. So how was it back in place? I took photos of everything with my phone, the pallets, the straps, the inside of the trailer. But when I looked at the photos later, they were corrupted. Not all of them, just the ones from the warehouse. The images were distorted, stretched with strange patterns of light and shadow that hadn't been visible when I took them. And in one photo, in the darkness at the back of the trailer, there was a shape. Tall, wrong proportions. Watching. I called dispatch as soon as I got signal, told them I couldn't complete the delivery. The warehouse was abandoned. No way to offload. They were confused. They had no record of the delivery. No order number, no customer, no paperwork in their system. But I had the delivery slip in my hand. I could see the coordinates, the instructions, the signature from the Pittsburgh pickup. It was right there. Except when I looked at it again, it wasn't. The paper was blank. Not erased, just blank. Like it had never been written on at all. The only thing visible was my own signature at the bottom, confirming I'd accepted the load. Everything else was gone. I drove straight to the terminal, told them to unload the trailer. I wanted nothing to do with whatever was on those pallets. They opened the trailer, and the pallets were gone. The entire trailer was empty. Not a single pallet, not even tie-down marks on the floor where they should have been. Just an empty trailer and me standing there, trying to explain cargo that didn't exist. I took 2 days off, told my dispatcher I was sick, sat in my apartment and tried to convince myself it had been some kind of hallucination. Carbon monoxide poisoning, maybe. A gas leak in the truck. Something rational. Something that made sense. But 6 months later, I was scrolling through news on my phone and I saw a headline. Hikers discover human remains near abandoned warehouse in West Virginia. I clicked on it, read the article. The warehouse was about 30 miles outside Charleston, same area where I'd made my delivery. The remains were old, decades old, according to the forensic analysis. Multiple victims. The investigation was ongoing. The article included a photo of the warehouse. I recognized it immediately. Same rust stains, same broken windows, same loading dock where I'd heard those footsteps, where I'd seen that shape in the darkness. I quit the next week, told my dispatcher I was done. He tried to talk me out of it. I'd been a good driver, reliable, 12 years with the company. But I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't drive those routes. Couldn't be alone on dark roads, wondering what I might find at the next delivery. I work in a warehouse now. Forklift operator. Same industry, but I'm never alone. Never in the dark. Never wondering what's waiting for me at the end of an unfamiliar road. But sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to sleep, I still hear it. Those footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer, and I wonder if I ever really left that parking lot at all. or if part of me is still there, standing in front of that loading dock door, watching it slowly swing open to reveal what's waiting inside.